Today on Delicious Ambitious, we meet Elliott, an environmental campaigner for Friends of the Earth. Katie is passionate about climate change, and her job involves getting politicians and businesses to sit up, listen, and take action to literally save the world. Katie, you're a campaigner for Friends of the Earth.
Yep.
What does that mean and what do you do?
Well, it's interesting when you asked me this, and I kind of was, hold on a second, let's go back and see exactly what that means. And apparently, theoretically, that means smaller objectives working up to a bigger goal. And I think that's probably quite indicative of what I do, and it's looking at, across the board, different objectives to try and meet a greater goal. And the greater goal is obviously tackling climate change. And we work across communities and across the country to try and convey messages to Parliament and to government to try and get them to do more about climate change. So we kind of act as an interface between the public and the government and try and convey messages in a powerful and succinct way to people, the key decision makers who can make a difference.
And why is that sort of activity so important to what you do?
Well, climate change is obviously the greatest threat we face, and that's what drives me and what my sort of passion is. And as I say, you need to make sure that you've, in a sense, got those messages across and making governments accountable to the public who effectively elect them and making them listen to them and looking at different areas where climate change can, be a positive impact on, say, businesses who will look at, investing in new technologies and different areas that, we can use across the board.
How did you get into this sort of field?
I did a politics degree and I did an internship on Capitol Hill. So I was always interested in politics, but politics is obviously a really diverse area, and there's sort of two things that put me off going into politics. One was that I was concerned about getting into a party machine, in effect, and feeling that maybe I was too young, that I didn't have my views strong enough, and also that there's a lot of grey areas. I mean, do you tax people at 23 or 25%? But climate change to me was black and white, and so it was very easy, and in a way that well, that's an issue that's right and wrong, that there was no, grey areas to climate change. And I've always had a gut feeling, over the last few years, and thought, this keeps coming up. And when I left university, I thought, I'm going to go and volunteer for a while and just see what it's like. And came to Friends of the Earth and was totally inspired by what they do here. And thought, I want to be a part of that, and felt that it was so important that I couldn't go off and do anything else.
So how do you feel as a relatively young woman debating some of these meaty issues with the politicians?
In a way, I think it gives you a different perspective, and it's not often that a younger woman goes in to talk to these often sort of middle-aged men that dominate politics, but often I think that gives me a fresh perspective, and so in a way it gives me an advantage, because I might be able to lay things out in a different way that gets them involved, or I can look at different areas and look at how it will work with younger audiences and how it can work across the board. And I think generally I often have a fresher perspective on things, which is generally useful. So I think occasionally there's a little bit intimidating with the big political figures if you're meeting with the great and the good, but I think that's probably the case in any career option, and at the end of the day they're just normal people, and if you know what works with them, you can work with it to the best of your ability.
Did you learn some tricks when you did your internship on Capitol Hill that helped you deal with them?
It was very interesting to work on Capitol Hill, especially a few years ago when I did it, in that the debate on climate change was a lot less progressive than it is now, and I think in the States it is now moving on. It was very interesting because for once I worked in a Republican office, and it was very much I was the odd one out, in a sense, and it's very interesting to be that odd one out, and I think it helps you to galvanise your arguments and make them very clear and think about exactly what you're doing and how you can work with different audiences. So in a way it was very helpful, rather than just being in something that might have reflected more your own viewpoints.
So what are some of the challenges that you face in your current role?
I think there's a lot of challenges, in the sense that there's a heck of a lot to be done in a very short space of time in terms of climate change, as the window of opportunity for us to tackle climate change and avoid catastrophic climate change is very limited. And so in a sense it's to convey that message to the public and to get the key decision makers on board in the timescale allowed. I mean, it's a phenomenal task that needs to be done, and you need to look at every area of society and every person who has an involvement, which is individuals, businesses, schools, communities and government, and look at who is effectively going to be able to pull on that leadership and make sure that the public goes along. And so it's balancing those things. There's a lot of challenges in the sense, I think the biggest challenge is time, and making sure that the necessary action is taken in the time available.
So what are the best bits about what you do?
I absolutely love what I do. I mean, you know, I get a lot of job satisfaction in terms of it's very exciting. It's an issue that is at the top of the political agenda right now. So it's great to be in that situation. It's good to go out and meet people who are genuinely interested in what you're doing. And it's good as well when you when something happens and you get a win, and say there's some government policy that shifts, and you know that there are people out there who are going to benefit. And it's not just the greater problem of climate change, but say if you're working with farmers and you know they're going to get new markets, and you know that you're helping elderly people in terms of fuel poverty issues. So it's great when you know that there is actual results and impacts on the ground, and it's great when you can see policy shifting and people going in the right direction.
Do you have a mentor or someone who inspires you?
It was interesting you asked this. I was thinking, hold on a second. I've worked with some fantastic people at Friends of the Earth, and when I joined, I had a boss who is phenomenal. She's moved on to work in government and other sectors, which is great because she's moving around. And there's some other people here that I've worked with that I have been really inspired by, who have got the dedication and the commitment and know how to do it, and the patience to work. So yeah, outside I think there's lots of different people who you're inspired for various abilities they have, and think they've got brilliant media presence, and they've got brilliant policy knowledge, and they're great at talking to an audience, and I mean it's brilliant. I go and see Al Gore came, and he's speaking out on climate change and doing a fantastic speech that's really stimulating and rousing and really passionate and gets everyone in the audience going. So I think there's different parts of what people are doing on this that are really inspiring.
Is there a book or a quote or anything like that that's inspired you in your...
I think mainly in my life it's kind of been, my dad used to say to me, make it happen, and that was it. It was like, make it happen, do it, don't sort of wait around, just do it. And I think that's probably a case in, we need to make the change, we need to make it happen. So yeah, I mean, I quite like a few ditties, to be honest. I think they're quite,
inspiring.
Yeah, they are, and they get you going in a way. But yeah, I think probably make it happen is the thing that probably kept me going.
Well, what would your advice be to other young women who equally want to make a difference through what they do and have an impact?
In terms of other women, I think that obviously everyone can make a difference in everything they do in terms of your everyday life, and it's just a case of, I think, remaining positive and looking at the positive aspects. And it's not a case of negative, everything you do has to have a negative impact on your life. There's a lot of gains across the board, and in terms of, I think that if people focus on those positive aspects and try and work through and pace yourself, and learn from people and listen to different people, and learn from people who've done it before or might be able to contribute something to you. I think you can always learn something from everyone. So yeah, I'll say remain positive, learn from others. I think that's probably all the main things I've learned so far.
Why is there such a short sort of time window, and what are some steps that the people watching this could take to have an impact?
Okay, in terms of the window of opportunity to tackle climate change, the reason why there's a problem is because there's a time lag in what we do in terms of emitting these dangerous greenhouse gases and it having an effect on the earth. It's kind of like if you put a blanket on yourself in winter, it takes a little while before you warmed up, and on a far larger scale we're blanketing the earth Earth, and we haven't had the effect yet. So in a sense, we've already done some damage. We're committed to some damage. There's a small amount left. There's a small sort of window where we can try and reverse what we're doing. So I mean, our own Prime Minister in the UK has put that figure at about 7 years. So a very small window when you're talking about globally. We need to make sure that everyone starts to reduce their emissions within that period. So, but that doesn't mean to say it's an insurmountable challenge, and people should feel disempowered of what they can do. And taking action every day on your life to try and reduce your emissions is valuable, and it does add up. What we're doing at Friends of the Earth is we're campaigning for a new law, so we get government to actually put a law across the whole UK, across the economy, and that will trickle down to all of us, so we can make it easier and cheaper for us to do the right thing. So we're calling that campaign as our Big Ask campaign. We're saying to everyone, if you do one thing, write to your MP, tell them you care about climate change, and ask them to introduce a new climate change bill. And that's what we're campaigning for at the moment across the organisation. So we've got a website, visit thebigask.com. Tom York from Radiohead has been fronting the campaign as our special advocate on climate change. And it's literally like 1 minute, log onto their website and you can email your MP straight away. So it's just showing your MP, and the more they feel that there are people out there who care, the more willing they will be to take action. And we've already seen that happening in the last 6 months of the campaign. We've seen a lot of people taking action, and we've seen a lot of MPs getting involved. So it does work. It's a tried and tested method, and if people can convey that message, they can get their MPs to do the right thing, and then it'll trickle down, so it'll make it easier for you and I to do the right thing. Every tonne does count, and we were saying it hangs around in the atmosphere, so every tonne of carbon dioxide that you can not emit in terms of walking instead of taking the car, or using your bike, or possibly taking the train down to Paris as opposed to flying, things like that, those actions, they will make a difference. So think about in each area of your life where you can make those small little differences that aren't really going to affect you and your lifestyle. In fact, quite often there's other benefits that you can get from taking it, sourcing locally organic food. And it tastes a heck of a lot better, and you're supporting your local farmer, but at the same time you'll be doing more to tackle climate change.